Hello everyone, I've got an interesting repair to show you guys. This is a 2010 Volkswagen Jetta with the 2.5 liter 5-cylinder gas engine. And it belongs to my neighbor. I was working in my garage and my neighbor came over and asked me if I could take a look at his car. He said, "Hey, I noticed you have a similar car to mine. Saw my 2011 Jetta Sport Wagon sitting in the driveway there, and so I'm wondering if you could take a look at my car." He said he went to start it one morning and the car would not start. Tried jump starting it, no luck. He tried a few other things, tried to move the shifter wouldn't even move, and then he even had trouble getting the key out of the ignition. So a lot of weird issues going on here that sound shifter related. Let me show you guys what I found here. It's pretty interesting and maybe it'll help you guys out as well. So you'll notice when I try to start the car here, the engine will not crank. But pay close attention to the shift indicator. You'll notice it goes from park to drive and then goes blank. And this was a telltale sign that it had something to do with the shifter or the shifter position. Notice the key won't come out. Let's take a look at that one more time. Park, drive, and then blank. So that told me there's probably something going on here, either with the range selector or the shifter assembly or something to do with the ignition lock. But we have a no crank concern. I cannot get the shifter out of park, and at times the key won't come out of the ignition either. Now, having experience with a lot of GM vehicles, I thought there was something going on with the shifter, but when I opened the hood here, I found that there were some rodent droppings on the engine cover, as you can see there. And that's a first sign of something being chewed on. So the first thing I look at is down underneath the air intake here. I go to the transmission range selector, or the park neutral switch sometimes, as it's called. And if you look close there, you can see two wires chewed off. There's two wires chewed off right at the connector. And there's a bunch of insulation down in here from some critter that was planning on building a nest and making this car his home sweet home. So I knew right off the bat that that was the cause of the problem. The tricky part is, because those wires are chewed off so close to the connector, this is going to make the wiring repair much more difficult than it would be if it was chewed in the middle of the harness. Nevertheless, I was still able to get a little bit more slack on the harness, taking it out of the little retainers that it sits in. And as you can see, we have two wires chewed completely off, and then one brown wire here in the middle of the connector was nibbled on a little bit. Didn't get any of the copper wiring, but just chewed on that insulation. So I have a feeling we're going to be able to repair this if I can do it right and not damage the terminals. First thing we'll have to do here to get to those terminals is take a photo of what wire goes where. This is very important. Always take a photo of the connector before you take it apart. There's a little pink terminal retainer in here. You're going to need a small flathead screwdriver to get this apart. You slide it out to the side here and you can pull it out the rest of the way. There's your little terminal retainer. We've got that out of the way. Next thing we're going to have to do is get the little terminals out. And this is where it gets a little tricky. I wish I had a video clip of this, but I didn't take one. You're going to need a small pick tool, and you're going to have to insert the pick tool on the top and the bottom of each terminal. This will flatten the two little metal tabs, as you'll see later on in the video, that hold the terminal in the connector. Another thing you're going to want to make sure you do is put your heat shrink on the existing wire harness first. I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten to put the heat shrink on the existing wire, and I soldered it up and then realized I didn't have my heat shrink on and had to do it all over again. So always put your heat shrink on first. And I would have gotten video clips of the wire soldering, but I was having a really tough time with this one in particular, so I did not document the actual soldering of the wires. After that, I used my heat gun here and applied heat to the heat shrink, and as you can see, the heat shrink tubing shrinks over the existing wires, sealing out any moisture or contaminants, making sure that it's a good, clean connection. And there we go, we have the repaired wires. Next thing we have to do is spread the little tabs back out that we flattened earlier This ensures that the terminal stays in the connector, and then put the terminal back into the connector. Make sure you refer to that photo earlier and put the terminal back in its correct place. When installing the terminal, you want to make sure that it's fully seated in the connector. Once you've got it fully seated in the connector, give it a little bit of a tug. Don't yank on it, but just tug it slightly to make sure that it stays inside the connector. And that's it. Now, I ran the wiring back into the vehicle here. I had to reroute it a little bit, and the wire loom wasn't quite enough to cover the shorter wires there. When you shorten a couple wires, they usually won't fit inside the loom, so I'm going to go back later on and get some more loom here and cover the rest of those wires up. But there's the finished project. I've got the wiring repaired, and I'm going to clean the rest of this junk out here later on. But let's make sure that the car starts up now. Now, as you can see, the car starts and runs fine. We have a few warning lights, but that was caused by a dead battery. Once I took the vehicle out for a very brief drive, as you can see here, those warning lights went out, except for the bulb out indicator, and I took care of that later on. We had a burnt out tail lamp bulb. As you can see there, all the lights are off, except for that bulb indicator, and the car is running great. So there you have it. Fixed the wiring, didn't have to replace the whole harness or even the connector, and saved him some money. Hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and I'll see you guys next time.